On Tech News Today, the IRS got hacked, Recode and GigaOm got acquired, and a new alarm clock will wake you up to the smell of money. It's all coming up next on Tech News Today.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CashFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Wednesday, May 27th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by ZipRecruiter. Are you hiring? With ZipRecruiter.com, you can post to 100-plus job sites, including social networks, all with a single click. Screen, rate, and hire the right candidates fast. Try ZipRecruiter with a free 4-day trial now at ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. My name is Mike Elgan. Our co-anchor today is ZDNet contributing writer Kevin Tofel. And welcome to you, Kevin.
Hey, Mike. How are you? Good to be here.
I'm doing great. Now, I'm excited to announce that you're going to be our Wednesday co-anchor henceforth, and I'm really excited about it. And you've always been a fantastic guest and a great host to have on as a sort of guest co-anchor. But now you're a weekly co-anchor, and I couldn't be happier about it.
Yeah, I'm actually very excited too. This actually makes it easier because if I know I'm going to be doing something the same day every week, I can just schedule around it. And as I said before the show, as long as the network is happy and the viewers are happy, I'll be here every Wednesday. Well,
it's wonderful, and we try to. What we do is, if you haven't noticed, when you look at our weekly co-anchors, we try to get people who are at the top of their fields, who specialize in certain areas. So, for example, we've got Lindsay Turrentine, who's the editor-in-chief for CNET Reviews. She's a specialist in product reviews. We've got Joe Panettiere, who's a specialist in both enterprise computing and the channel. And now we've got you, who's a specialist. You're also very knowledgeable about technology in general, but you're a specialist in mobile computing and wearable devices, which is really fantastic. We got another surprise coming up for Thursday. We'll announce that in the future at some point. And then, of course, on Friday we have Christina Warren, who specializes in being Christina Warren. So you're just perfect for this show, and I couldn't be happier to have you on. So why don't we jump right into the news? Our top story today: the IRS got hacked. America's tax collection agency, the Internal Revenue Service, disclosed yesterday that hackers gained access to the personal information of more than 100,000 U.S. taxpayers. Aaron Sankin is a staff writer for the Daily Dot and joins us now. Welcome, Aaron.
How you doing, Mike?
I'm doing great, thanks. Now, how did they manage to pull off this hack?
So the hack is it affects about 100,000 American taxpayers. And the hackers used an application on the IRS website called Get Transcript. And what Get Transcript essentially does is it allows taxpayers to see their tax return and see their tax payment identification. Hackers were able to game this system by collecting information on these people that they collected elsewhere, things like names, social security numbers, birthdays, and then they used that to beat the verification questions and then download people's tax returns. About 100,000 tax returns were compromised out of about 200,000 attempts. The IRS is sending letters of notification to every person who had an attempt made on their account, even if the compromising of that account was not successful, because that indicates that hackers have some, or at least believe they have some piece of information on these people that could make them vulnerable to identity theft in the future.
So Aaron, the IRS is like the organization that we love to hate, so probably a lot of people don't feel sympathy for them, but obviously do feel sympathy for the victims here, which you said are about 100,000 different people. And it looks like that application that you mentioned, which was hacked, is now not available, and the government is sending letters to the people who may have been impacted. Is the government doing anything technically about this? Are they have they said anything about reopening the app or rewriting it or anything like that?
So from what I've seen, I think they plan on eventually reopening the app or making it doing it in a way that's more secure. And I think kind of in a general sense, the IRS is in a bit of a tough position here. The main thing that people suspect that these hackers are going to do with this information is use it to file fraudulent tax returns. So let's say you have the information and all the information contained in someone's tax return. and you're a hacker, you can then go and the next year and file a fraudulent tax return and essentially claim whatever refund they have, that person, the victim, is going to get for themselves. So as they're with the information in a tax return, it makes that sort of social engineering hack a lot easier because you know how much they made the previous year, you know what their social security number or tax ID number is, you know what sort of deductions they take. So they're not going to, it's not going to trigger those same flags in the IRS's system. And at the same time, the IRS is an agency that's really been hit pretty hard by budget cuts. So they're operating in at a level that is stressing their services across the board, even as far as answering phones. So as the IRS is dealing with this, they're also having to contend with this massive wave of tax return fraud. So I think there's a projection they gave that next year they're expecting there to be $21 billion in tax return fraud that they're expecting to see. And this is up from only $6.5 billion just a few years ago. So the IRS is really having to deal with this very new, very pervasive type of fraud at the same time as their budget is shrinking. So you can see why it might be difficult for them to kind of keep up with, the latest attack vectors of hackers who are getting, increasingly sophisticated.
Now, I think obviously the immediate question that everyone is going to have is, did I get hacked? And if I did, what should I do about it? What's your advice for people who are concerned about whether or not their own personal information has been compromised?
Well, the IRS says they're going to be sending a letter to all 200,000 people whose information was compromised. There's also information on the IRS's website. They have a phone number that people can call to get information. IRS is also going to be offering free credit monitoring service to about 100,000 taxpayers whose information was compromised. They have not said exactly how long that free credit monitoring service is going to go, but that could also be a little problematic because compared to information like a credit card number or the password to your Gmail account, the information contained in your tax return is a lot stickier. It's going to last forever. So your credit card is compromised, you get a new credit card number. Your Gmail is hacked, you get a new Gmail password. You're not going to change your credit card. You're not going to change your social security number. You're not going to change your date of birth. So this information, which can be used for identity theft, can be used for a lot of nefarious purposes, is going to stick with you forever. So once that information has been compromised, it's theoretically problematic, going forward. This is a problem for everyone across the board as identity theft becomes more and more prevalent. I think there are reasons. This gives people reason to, be a little more active in checking their credit score, every year or two, just to make sure everything looks right. To be checking their credit card statements more frequently. I think it's just knowing that this information is theoretically out there, and there's so many different ways that hackers could get it, creates a situation where people, may have to be a little more vigilant if they don't want to be victimized.
One of the strategies I use, even though I'm a pretty digital guy, I actually do keep paper copies of all my IRS forms and tax returns and so on. But even so, Aaron, I don't think that would help me in this case because the hackers actually got to the IRS database through this app, correct?
Yeah. So it's essentially you're kind of left at the mercy of the IRS to notify you whether or not you've been hacked. And if you have been hacked, what the IRS is doing is, in addition to the credit monitoring service, they have a separate system for people who have been victims of identity theft tax fraud, or theoretically could be victims of identity theft tax fraud, where for the next year, few years, their tax returns will be routed through a separate system where they receive additional scrutiny, and they also will have a special PIN number that they will need to enter in order to file their returns. So there is some additional security precautions placed for people who are the most vulnerable to this.
Makes sense. Aaron Sankin is at dailydot.com, and you can follow him on Twitter at @Sankin. That's ASANKIN. Thank you for joining us today, Aaron.
And thanks a lot, guys.
All right. Got some breaking news for you. Mark Gurman over at 9 to 5 Mac 10 minutes ago published a story that says that Apple is readying an alternative to Google Now, which they're going to be calling Proactive. And according to Mark Gurman's report, this will leverage Siri, Contacts, Calendar, Passbook, and third-party apps to create a preemptive element of their virtual assistant technology. Again, that's called Proactive, and that news just broke at 9to5mac.com. Well, more news for you in just a second, but first let's talk about our sponsor today, ZipRecruiter, which is going to help you hire the right person. Of course, if you manage people, if you own a small business, hiring people is by far the most important thing you will ever do, because if you hire the best people, you have the best company and you'll succeed. And if you hire the wrong people, then you're going to waste a lot of time and money, and you could end up having problem with your objectives, your goals, your business, the financial security of your business, and so on. So make sure you hire the right person. Now, it's not as easy as it sounds, because, of course, good candidates are everywhere. There are so many job boards, so many social networks, so many places where people find themselves and who are looking for work. So there's not just one place to go. Well, actually there is. It's called ZipRecruiter. But from ZipRecruiter, you can post to 100+ job sites with a single click, and you can even post your job to Facebook, Google+, and Twitter. And if you use their Twitter option, you can actually send your job application out on Twitter automatically the instant that you post it, and you can be matched to candidates from over 4 million resumes. You just post once, and within 24 hours, the candidates start rolling in. You can even create custom email responses when candidates apply, and you can find candidates in any industry nationwide. So easy to use, and that's why ZipRecruiter has been used by more than 400,000 businesses, and you can try it now for free. So easy to use. Just try ZipRecruiter today for a free 4-day trial and get your perfect candidate before they go to somebody else by going to ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. That's ZipRecruiter.com/TNT. Well, the tech news site Recode has been acquired by Vox Media in an all-stock deal. This is a little bit surprising, Kevin Tofel, because, of course, Recode, those of us in the press, you know, this is a solid news organization. They have lots of scoops. They're very insidery, as Lance Ulanoff at Mashable has said this morning. But they have not been successful in terms of both getting the attention of users and readers. 1.5 million regular monthly visitors, which is, you know, in the larger scheme of things, not that high. And apparently they've had trouble attracting the advertising dollars they'd like to attract. And they're going to Vox Media, which, of course, also owns The Verge, but also Polygon, right? Curbed, Eater, Racked, and, of course, they have an editorial brand called Vox. What do you make of this acquisition? Is this a good move by Recode?
Well, I mean, time will tell if it's a good move. I was a little surprised that they only had about 1.5 million uniques, and that's according to ComScore. We don't know the actual data, of course, but that number was much lower than I thought, mainly because of what you said at the beginning, Mike. These are very insidery people. Walt and Kara are, you know, top-notch journalists in the tech field and have fantastic contacts and sources and get tons of insider information. They also put on, as a group, besides their blog, they also have their events business, which does very, very well. And I suspect that's been doing well for them, but on the blog side, advertising side, probably not so much. So my short-term take is, yeah, this is probably a great move for Recode, and I think it's a bonus for Vox as well, in particular The Verge, which some of the reviewers from Recode, and they're very good reviewers, are going to actually be reviewers for The Verge now, and even Walt Mossberg is going to have the occasional review on The Verge, which is going to be very interesting to see his byline over there.
Yeah, and it's a good mix, as you said, precisely because The Verge has gone out of its way to not be insidery about the industry, to not be a business-oriented publication, to be more about the culture of technology. And so, as you said, the reviewers are going to be going over to The Verge. Walt Mossberg's you know, occasional reviews and so on will no doubt be on The Verge, and you can see a clean split where Recode will be able to be as industry focused as it wants to be, and The Verge can be as culturally relevant as it wants to be. And of course, that just makes a lot of sense. Now, looking at the origin of these two editorial wings is really interesting. Of course, Recode is really what used to be called All Things D, and it was owned by Dow Jones, which owns the Wall Street Journal. And of course, Walt Mossberg is a longtime tech writer for the Wall Street Journal. Back in the days when there was just one, he was it. And And of course, he got famous along those lines. And of course, All Things D was a really popular source of original content because they bring, they drag these luminaries on stage, including Steve Jobs and Bill Gates together even once, and get them talking. So it's really great that they can focus on doing what they do instead of out there raising money and trying to pander to an audience in order to attract advertisers and so on. There's too much of that already. So I'm pretty excited about this, actually.
Yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to watch. As you said, Walt I look at him as the father of the modern review because he was doing reviews long before we all had mobile devices, in the Wall Street Journal. So it'll be interesting to see the overlap. There isn't apparently much overlap. As you said, The Verge is getting more into cultural, lifestyle, and Recode has really been focused on the business side of the tech industry for the most part. So it's actually a good fit. It might not have been one that we've seen coming, but now that you look at it, you're like, yeah, that makes sense.
Just to put it into context numerically, Recode has 44, or had before some of them went over to The Verge, 44 full-time employees and 3 contract employees. And some of them are just stellar journalists. Ina Fried, of course, Peter Kafka. It's too many to list. So hopefully all of those folks will be retained, and if not all of them, most of them. And I'm sure that, in fact, will be the case. Well, in somewhat related news, GigaOm, something near and dear to your heart, Kevin, has been acquired by a content farm called Knowingly. The assets include about 8 years worth of GigaOm content, including hundreds of stories written by Kevin Tofel. GigaOm was shut down about 3 months ago due to financial problems. You must have some thoughts about this, Kevin. I mean, all the sweat and tears and everything that went into all the stuff that you've written is now going to be handed over to somebody who just wants to squeeze it dry for whatever monetization they can get out of it.
I'm sorry, GigaOm. I'm not familiar with that. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, and just to clarify, if there's ever a Jeopardy category with my name on it, I was 200 posts shy of writing 10,000 there in my 8 years. We closed down. I had about 9,800 posts over there. It's, as a former GigaOm writer, it's sad to see because, we worked so hard to create such what we thought was compelling content, and we really don't know what is going to be done with it now. It is essentially gone to a content farm, so it'll be interesting to see what happens in August when the site relaunches. The new CEO or the owner of GigaOm has said, it was second to none in what it does, although I say in what it did because it doesn't do anything anymore. So I'm really curious to see what happens with the GigaOm brand and the content at this point. And I'll be honest, off channel, the GigaOm writers that I used to work with, we had no knowledge of this. We found out online publicly, just like everybody else did. So as far as I know, none of us were contacted to go back and write for GigaOm or anything like that. So again, I couldn't tell you what they're going to do with it. I do wish them well.
Well, I have an opinion on this generally, which I haven't expressed, and I'll express it here, and you can comment on it or not, according to what you feel like doing. But I think that the people who ran GigaOm, especially Om Malik, have escaped criticism to a shocking degree. I mean, I've been in publications that have been venture-backed and closed in recessions and things like that, when everything's, Silicon Valley, of course, everything's boom or bust, and during the bust, they close things. And, it was a slow, gradual, there was an attempt to save it. There were some layoffs. Some of us took cuts in pay. There was an attempt to keep it going, to provide some sort of advance notice to the staff. In this case, it was going just like everybody thought this is like super successful, and then suddenly it was closed, just out of nowhere. And the problem the problem is that Om Malik is a really nice guy. Everybody loves this guy. He's a sweet guy. I know, I've met him personally. I've been on Twit with him. But still, the facts are that this was, I think, a mismanaged situation. I think that it's much better for maybe a small, hardcore, of course, it's easy for me to say, I acknowledge that, but for a small, hardcore group of journalists to continue it in some form than to just hand the brand over to some content farm to be exploited. Do you have any thoughts on this?
I do have thoughts, and some of them I can't share because of agreements that I signed upon the company closing. What I can say is that from an outsider's perspective, I can completely understand where you're coming from, Mike. And Ohm is a great guy. I've still talked to him, not often, not as often, because we just don't have a working relationship these days. I guess the best way I could say it is there were a lot of moving parts. There was a lot of, I'll say, misinformation or information held back. And I think the outcome could have been avoided is probably the best thing I could say without getting myself into trouble.
Yeah. Well, the good news is that, you know, all of the, to the best of my knowledge, all or most of the journalists who wrote for GigaOm have found great gigs elsewhere, including yourself. And so we get to continue. You know, I'm a big believer in that the, you know, for really good journalism, the journalist is the brand. And, you know, it almost doesn't matter. You know, there's some journalists, you know, especially the caliber that used to write for GigaOm, who it doesn't matter where they're writing. Just let me read them, you know, and let me find them. And that's the brand. You know, Kevin Tofel is the brand. So, you know, it's all good, and you know, from the reader's perspective, I don't think but it was just too bad. It was such a unique site, and I miss it, and I just hope that they don't do something stupid with it. And with that, we'll move on to another story. Well, Google has open sourced its Roboto font, which was introduced into the Android 4.0 ice cream sandwich version of Android years ago. It's the default font on both Android and Chrome OS. So if you look at Chrome OS every day, you see this Roboto font every day. The font and a revamped font production toolchain was uploaded to GitHub yesterday, enabling anyone to modify and use the font. Kevin Tofel, I don't know why anybody would want to modify a font. I mean, it just doesn't seem like there's got to be a lot of popular demand for this.
Well, everybody likes their own thing, and that's fine. I'm a big fan of Roboto. I use a Chromebook Pixel 2 every day, so I'm staring at that font all day long, and I love it. It's good to see that this is going open source, by the way, so that anyone who wants to use it can use it. And I think the timing is actually interesting because we're hearing rumors, and we'll find out for sure in about 2 weeks, that Apple's actually changing their font to the same font they use on the Apple Watch. So the San Francisco font will be used for iOS and perhaps OS 10, the next version. So that's just interesting, that the timing of this.
The San Francisco font is a font that of such high impact that they named a city in California after it. It's really quite a story. Well, we told you yesterday that Twitter has been trying to buy Flipboard all year long. Well, now we're hearing that several companies have also held meetings about acquiring Flipboard, including both Google and Yahoo, although apparently Twitter got the furthest and actually got to the point where they were haggling over a price. The Google and Yahoo meetings never really got that far. Kevin Tofel, why would anybody want to buy Flipboard?
Oh, the reach and the content. I mean, you know, look at Twitter. I could see why Twitter wants it. When Twitter is still trying to figure out how it's going to make money, and it has the reach, and it's looking to add more content and raise engagement and keep people locked into the Twitter ecosystem. So a buy like Flipboard, where it's already you can already tweet stories from Flipboard right out, which is awesome. I could see why Twitter wants. I could see why Google and Yahoo want it as well for the same reasons. But I think Twitter's going to fight real hard to get it.
Google launched an alternative to Flipboard. Don't recall what it was called, but it failed, and it failed to catch on, which is too bad too, because I had a prominent placement on there in the early days because I got in there quickly. But yeah, it's a great concept, and when Flipboard first came out, it was well known for its user interface, which was influential, and lots of apps now have that very similar user interface of flipping cards and so on. So it's a little bit less innovative now, or feels less innovative than it used to, but still it's a great app, and especially great on a tablet, in my opinion. Well, in product update news, Google has been indexing relevant app content from Android phones and tablets for 2 years, but now the feature has been extended to the iOS platform. But it works only with apps from developers who have explicitly requested indexing. I've never really noticed this on Android, Kevin Tofel, you know, linking to content on apps. Have you used this, and have you found it useful?
I have used it. It's pretty new for Android. I think it's only about a month or so old. So it's nice to see when you're doing a Google search, a relevant app to your search would pop up. And most of the time, I already have that app installed and such. But I found a couple that way. I would think that iOS developers, I'm not sure how they're going to feel about this. That I don't know that they're going to see a big boost in app downloads because of it. I think Android certainly benefits. But it's nice to see. It's nice to see that developers will have that option on iOS so that people can find apps through deep linking and in search.
Yeah, definitely. Well, in our insecurity segment, an iOS bug makes iPhones crash and reboot when a specific string of text is sent to an iPhone. So this is your opportunity to sort of like crash your friend's iPhone. It works even when the phones are locked. Apple says they're going to fix it. And Jason Cleanthes, you've tried this out. How did it go for you?
Yeah, we tried it out last night when we heard about it on our devices at home, and it immediately sends your iMessenger app into crash mode. Every time you try to launch it, it just crashes. You can't get back into iMessages, so the only way out of it is you have to trick the system by interrupting the overrun by sending it another message. In this case, you go to Photos and send a photo, and then when you receive that photo, it interrupts that loop that it's trapped in. But yeah, I was like, oh, I got to reset everything now.
Well, I'm glad you tried it so I didn't have to. And I'm curious about why this would actually work. Kevin Tofel, do you have any idea why that particular string of characters would crash a phone?
Yeah, I don't know why it was this particular string, but apparently it has to do with the Unicode rendering, and for some reason there's a bug in the iMessage code that it tries to continuously render this, and it struggles basically. So why it's this one-off type of text message, I have no idea, but I'm sure that Apple will squash the bug as soon as possible. A lot of people are making a big deal out of it, and part of me says, you know, the only people that can affect my phone are the people that typically have my phone number or are friends with me on iMessage. And if my friends do this, they're not going to be my friends for long. So I don't know it's a huge impact, but you know, from a bug perspective, it's a shame that it kind of got through Apple's testing, although I don't know how you'd find this one.
Yeah, exactly. You'd have to try every conceivable combination of characters. Looked like there's a lot of Arabic in there too. That's strange. Well, we got a big number for you today: 3.8 million. That's how many dollars the data security research organization Ponemon Institute says is the average for a data breach. Now that's up from $3.5 million last year. IBM paid for the study. So, Kevin Tofel, one of the reasons that the price of breaches is going up is the nature of the breaches, which include, of course, the Sony Pictures Entertainment hack and also the Target hacks. Those were, in addition to being horrible and complete in terms of hacks, especially the Sony Pictures hack, they were extremely expensive. And, you know, famously, Sony Pictures Entertainment had a kind of a inadequate policy about IT security that basically said, well, you know what? It's, you know, so what if we have to spend $1 million, and then the cost ended up being over $100 million. So yeah, so it's expensive to get hacked. I think we already knew that.
Oh, and I think that number is going to go up too, based on our earlier story with the IRS issue, because if there's $21 billion in potential fraud coming next year for tax refunds, that number is going to go up big time.
Yep, absolutely. Well, in news you can lose, a Kickstarter project is building an alarm clock that wakes you up with smells. No, seriously. It's called Sensor Wake, and the $65 clock uses odor cartridges to wake you up with various scents. Options include coffee, croissants, candy, the ocean, a jungle, and even the smell of U.S. dollars to remind you why you're getting up in the first place. And if the smell doesn't wake you up, a conventional alarm sounds a few minutes later. Odor capsules last 2 months and cost $7.50 each. Let's check out this video.
We started Sensor Wake because we're damn sure happiness lies in simple things like a great morning or a smell we really love.
So the alarm clock is very boxy and white. Cartridges are black, they look like inkjet cartridges, sort of.
To offer a gradual, perfectly fresh awakening.
She looks really happy to be woken up.
Clear and fresh until your day really starts.
It's like in your childhood, you know, and you go to your mom's place, she cooks, it reminds you some good memories, and actually the scent has this power.
I don't know if this is a good thing, Kevin Tofel. I mean, you put in the smell of croissants, and then you wake up and you're like, oh, no actual croissants.
Scents in the morning. We tested it.
Yeah, that's a disappointment. I don't want just the smell.
It's the disappointment that wakes you up, actually.
My specialty is a fast detection method.
Yeah, you can smell money, but you don't have any. Sorry, wake up.
Including sleep quality.
Yeah, I'd go back to bed.
Right. Yeah, right. You just dream about these things.
Like scents or fragrance.
All right, I think we get the idea. You know, so many people have tried so many different smell-o-vision variants. They never really quite catch on, but this is definitely going to reach its Kickstarter goals. They're well on their way, and they've got like a month left. So yeah, 34 days to go, and they're like almost they're halfway there. So they're going to make it, and so we'll see if they actually produce this thing. Well, our TNT fan,
I hear their.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I was going to say, I hear their next product is scratch and sniff monitors. So
yeah,
that's what you have to follow up with.
That's a smell-o-vision version of the touch interface. So I hope they don't do that. Well, our TNT fan of the day is Mark Gage in Silver Spring, Maryland, who posted this picture in a Google Plus community called This Is Twit. Let's check it out. There we are in the car. I'm always unnerved by people who watch the video while driving. He said, though, explicitly, when somebody criticized him on Google Plus, and of course on Google Plus you will always get criticism for everything you post, that he was parked, and if you look in the lower left-hand corner, you can see a foot on the brake, and so he is not driving while watching. So either way, glad to have him watching. So how do you watch or listen to TNT? Just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup, and post it on Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT so we can find it. Kevin Tofel, what are you working on these days, and where can people read your stuff?
Oh, these days, well, in particular, I'm looking forward to Google I/O, which actually starts tomorrow. So I've got my curtain raiser or preview of what to expect. So I'll be curious to see how much of that I got right. And then in 2 weeks, we have Apple's WWDC. So its competing events are taking my attention for the next few weeks. So people can find me over at zdnet.com or right on Twitter. I am at Kevin C. Tofel.
Wonderful. And quick prediction, are they going to roll out a new version of Google Glass tomorrow?
I do not think so, no.
Okay. They're just going to be quiet about that for a little while. Wait for the wounds to heal, and then they'll come back with something that probably looks better. Well, thank you so much, Kevin Tofel. We'll see you next Wednesday.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Well, you can subscribe to Tech News Today on Deezer, or you can choose another way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1800 UTC at live.twit.tv. And if you're ever in the San Francisco Bay Area, come on in and watch us as part of our studio audience. Just send email to tickets@twit.tv. If you'd like to help us grow our audience, here's how you can do it. Just post a link to twit.tv/TNT on the social media site of your choice and tag 3 friends along with your recommendation to subscribe. You can also follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV, and you can follow me on Google+. Just find me on Google+ at +Mike Elgan. Also, don't miss Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific. Megan's guest tonight is former TNT co-anchor and current NPR Seoul Bureau Chief Elise Hu. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the Tech News Today. This show is produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Anthony Nielsen. I'll be at Google I/O tomorrow. Some new guy named Leo Laporte will be hosting this show at the special time of 8:30 a.m. Pacific, and Leo will also host our live coverage of the Google I/O keynote at 9:30. So don't miss any of it. My name is Mike Elgan. Thanks for tuning in.